Okay. Hey guys, it's the Any Thoughts podcast. It's me, Benny.
Me, B-Rad.
It's me, Big Mo. Amog, what's up?
Me, Abby, what's up?
So once again, we'd like to thank you for the support that we've seen recently. Sub count is growing, and with that, while we didn't hit our target of 100 subs by May, we want to extend the offer to when we do hit 100 subs. We're going to do whichever movie wins. So the options, like we said, are going to be listed below. And with that, but before we begin, does anybody want to do slaps and chaps?
I mean, I feel like all our chaps are going to be the same.
Fair.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and it's just this year, 2020, is the biggest chap of them all, honestly.
Yeah.
So, I think 2020 should be used as an insult at this point. Like it's just like stop being 2020.
Yeah.
Just anybody, if anybody misbehaves, Trump. We should
Honestly,
we just say
point,
2020
for Yellowstone to explode, but
or aliens
it's
or
coming.
aliens to show up.
Yeah, but anyway, so I guess with
It's coming.
that, yeah, I guess with that, we're gonna go into the topic of the show, which is a very serious topic to all of us here, and that's Black Lives Matter. So we're gonna be talking about George Floyd protests, all of that kind of stuff wrapped into one, and it's just going to kind of be a free-form conversation. But I guess to start us off, I would say personally, and I think everybody agrees here, that unjust killing of black men is not correct, especially by the police force. Regardless of what you're wrapped up in, like you should not be brutally murdered like George Floyd was. And I think that's something we can all stand behind. And also, I mean, like, we hear like, oh, a response to Black Lives Matter is all lives matter, right? And when you see it in that regard, it's like, well, why is it that the hashtag all lives matter is only brought up in response to Black Lives Matter? Yes, I think everybody can agree, all lives matter, no matter what you are, right? I think that is inherently a true statement, right? But are certain lives under more risk of being brutally killed by the police compared to people of darker skin? And like that's the point of the movement, is to bring awareness that you're not treated the same based on your skin color. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to anybody else who wants to speak on the subject.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Brad.
to go on what you're saying, Benny, I think the main reason why a lot of people say that whole all lives matter thing is because they feel threatened. They feel scared of the fact that when a minority starts to realize, hey, look, we've been oppressed, and want to tell people, hey, look, this movement we're behind is important to us, and us saying Black Lives Matter is so that people see and recognize that in the past, and still happening till today, there's been a system to keep us down and make sure we stay down. I mean, you look today, I'm not sure if you guys know what redlining is, but a red line is where you district certain areas so that you have majority black, Hispanic, in a certain area, and you keep that area as low income, low economic advantages there, and while everybody else prospers around them, where you have bad schooling systems, you don't have like places for black kids to go to after school to better enrich their learning. You don't have economic places like that or social places like that you have in wider areas. People not saying Black Lives Matter, saying not just when it comes to police brutality, but when it comes to education, when it comes to job and society issues that we face on a daily basis. That yes, we need to start treating people of color, people of minorities, much better than what we do right now, because as we starting to see, as we've been telling people for years, that hey, yeah, even though we have the same rights as you, we still get treated justly unfair by not only the justice system, the banks, and other systems out there, like in Hollywood. We get treated and shown a certain light. That hey, look, we need to show people that this is not right and there needs to be change.
Yeah, it's like, and just a small example of that is like, I think we've all went to the store and we've been racially profiled, like whether it be like a nice department store, and it's like, why is it that the clerk's following you around? Like, like that's not like a normal circumstance. I think most people find like, sure, it could be like, how can I help you? Fine, but like you can tell when like you're being like looked at from afar and like slowly you're being encroached on. Like that's happened to me a few times. Just being in the store, and I'm like, okay, well, like if anything, it just encourages me to get out of your store quicker. You know what I mean? Like, but regardless of that, I mean, with that said, I think the points that Brad brought up are good, and that's exactly the whole point of this movement. Is that look, constantly there's issues that might seem small to other people are just blatantly in your face all the time. Whether that be like schooling, you'd think all schooling is equal. Well, it's not. Whether that be just general interactions you'd have, maybe trying to get a job, stuff like that. People are going to look at you differently just because of your skin type. And so I think
even names sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like with that, I think we should talk about the biggest event recently that's kind of sparked this discussion again, which is the killing of George Floyd. Like restraint. My dad was a police officer, and like the thing is, like he'd always say, right? Like why is it that it takes you 20 people to dog on a guy? Like 2 or 3 of you can handle that easily, and that's it. And like he's always said that, and he's seen it just from like the ground up. Like it's like a lot of police kind of thrive on the fact that they're in a giant group, and it's almost like a gang. Like and it's like it's easy in that mentality to just kind of gang up on people. And the thing is, he like always looked at them like
mentality,
yeah, and the thing is, like, he's always looked at them, and it's like, why are you doing this? Like, like, it doesn't take that many people to, like, have this person detained if you need to detain them, And so, when you look at the George Floyd situation, if I'm correct, it was 2 officers, one pressed on his neck and the other on his back. And basically, like, all you needed was to put him in handcuffs if you thought he was a threat. Like, like, one of them could have kept his foot on his back, and but that's what I'm saying. Like, like one of them could have just done that and then it would have been good. But what happened instead? Like just keep pressing on his neck until he dies, like, and that's just not right, and like you could argue, people say like, oh, he was high on meth and he was high on heroin at the time, like, and those two things, sure, like, but when you look at the picture, like if he was already, successfully detained and he can't go anywhere, what was the point of that continued obsessive force?
Exactly. Yeah, no. To get on your point about the whole drug issue thing, when people like to use that whole example, well, like it's in like the whole like it's invalid because why people are getting so mad? He's a drug addict. Well, yes, in fact, he probably was high on drugs when the arrest happened, but being high on drugs doesn't mean being choked out. Like that's not the law. When you're high or when you're drunk, when a cop pulls you over, the most he should do is put you in handcuffs, put you in the back of the cruiser, take you to a drug tank so you sober up, and then start filing papers so you get in jail, you get a lawyer. There's due process. This, what happened to George Floyd, is not due process. This was somebody who didn't like him because of the color of his skin, the way he looked, and decided, you know what? I'm going to release some stress and pain I've been feeling the whole entire day. I don't know, maybe his girlfriend or whoever told him off one day, or somebody cussed him out and he was just feeling pissed off, and so he's going to take it out on the next black person he saw. And this person and the people who are associated with this guy are getting what they deserve. They are being treated as the criminals that they are, and hopefully they get tried guilty and they get sent off to jail like they deserve to be sent off to jail for what they did to this person.
They're being charged with second-degree murder, if I'm not mistaken, right? The guy who put his knee on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the main officer is being charged with second-degree murder, but then the surrounding officers are, I guess, being caught with like aiding and assisting the murder, but they're going to carry the same second-degree charges.
Yeah, yeah. Which is smart, because usually you want to, I know for some people, like, why are they being charged with first degree? Well, usually you only get one chance at this. Yeah. And getting them with the smaller crime it's a lot easier to convict with that than with a bigger crime. Because you need a lot more, you need to check off a lot more boxes with that first
degree
than you do with a third degree, you know?
I mean, another problem is that, and I think it's probably the biggest problem in this, it's not entirely just, cops, killing or, murdering Black people of color. But also comes down to a cop murdering, a person of color, and then going home to their family and pretending like nothing happened, And then months later, like, these videos come out, and then it's like, oh, now we have to put the cop in jail. So it's like, I think that's where the issue lies. Like, and it has to be in our system because, and I mean, it does make sense for that to be, it's like tough, I guess. I mean, when you see the video, obviously, with George Floyd, you're like, okay, like, what they did was wrong. This guy was detained. They had 4 cops there. His knee was clearly on his neck. George Floyd had no pulse 2 minutes afterwards when he took his knee off. But I think we just got to do a better job with our system to catch these things earlier and to get justice quicker. And yeah, that's why I think the problem is, like, cops these things should not be happening, and these people are just going home and enjoying time with their families and pretending like they just had another day on the job. It's like, no, you just killed somebody, you just murdered somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I think a simple like another thing is, like, which a lot of I've been seeing this a lot in a lot of posts, that like a lot of things one of the things that's being essentially stressed in, like, policies that need, like, reforms within, like, the police, most of the police departments is de-escalation. And I think that is something which, and as someone who understands how painful holds are, choke holds and, like, knee holds and, like, any kind of hold is, I mean, I have been on the receiving end of a chokehold. I've applied a chokehold on someone. It is the most painful fucking thing. Like, it can literally, like, if you apply it the wrong way, it leads to, it can lead to a death, or worse, if not death, which is the worst aspect of it. It can lead to a concussion, and a concussion like that it's fucking hard to get out of. Like, it's like just months of, like, blackouts and shit. So, I mean, I understand. So that is something which you need to understand. Like, I don't think putting your neck on, putting your knee on somebody's neck and saying, oh, yeah, it's just to detain this person. I don't think that's an answer. Like I agree with Benny with what he said, that, just, one person is enough to, like, hold somebody in place. You don't have to act like some fucking mob, trying to hold, like, why do you need 5 officers to, like, hold a perpetrator down? Like, I think 1, maybe 2 should be enough. Then again, I'm no one to, like, judge this. Having said that, that's one thing. Another thing is, this is something which I've been thinking about a lot, is I respect the entire unity behind the movement. I really do, and I'm very happy about that, because, it's finally getting a lot of people, and it's bringing a lot of people from, like, it's bringing in a lot of love, and it's bringing in a lot of support from everybody. And that is something which, I think it should be capitalized and used to, like, bring about better reforms. So that is something which we need to stress on, and we need to start thinking about it very logically. That, like, there are so many people, there's so many celebrities, like, donating and, like, understanding that, okay, we have a lot of privilege, and like, a lot of white people are saying this, a lot of white celebrities are saying this, that, oh, we have a lot of privilege, but we may not understand the kind of privileges we have, but we support everyone. I just think that it should not be, you stop posting that and then just leaving things where they are. I think it's high time that you all start standing up with your Black celebrities, your fellow Black celebrities, your Black brothers, your Black sisters. I mean, as much as I say this, and maybe it's time you'll truly show your support. Stop saying it for the sake of saying it. And this is something which really irritates me, because I've seen. I mean, I'll provide another perspective on this. I've been seeing so many people from, like, so many international students, like, from India and from, like, bunch of other countries are like, oh my God, Black Lives Matter, hashtag Blackout Tuesday, and I'm like, so it was okay when you called other people. So back when you guys were kids, you all were making fun of the kids who were different or who were dark skinned, and you all called them blackies. That was okay then, but now suddenly Black Lives Matter. I don't get this. I'm like, you cannot on one end, like, it makes you look like a fucking hypocrite, and it makes you look like a fucking hypocrite.
Definitely.
So this is something
you
which
brought up a point of privilege, and it's something that I wanted to kind of lightly touch on. The one good thing I'd say that has really came out of this event, I feel like it's the first time I've actually seen a large amount of white Americans actually acknowledge that they do have privilege. It's the first time I've actually seen that in a massive amount. Like before, in the case of like the Ferguson stuff and all of that, it was like, yes, these people have privilege, but it's like everybody was just like completely silent about it. Like it was like, like it's like, oh, okay, whatever, this happened. But like this time, like this is the first real time I've seen anybody in any capacity be like, yes, I've lived a privileged life, and now my eyes are open to the fact that this is not normal. This isn't actually how it's supposed to, like, this isn't how it is for other people. And I think that's a good thing to acknowledge in itself. And like, I mean, while I'm kind of annoyed in the example of like empty hashtags of people doing Blackout Tuesday or doing the hashtag Black Lives Matter, if like they personally weren't necessarily like involved with it or their behavior suggested otherwise that they're willing to condone other types of racism, I mean, I do say that for some reason this movement feels different in the sense like it feels like it's the first time there's like kind of like true unity on almost all fronts. And I think that's something to actually, see. Like, I've seen very few outliers in terms of, oh, like, what's the big deal? Like, this is the first time I can really say that, like, maybe like one or two people. And I guess, like, leading on from that, I saw an interesting video yesterday on Facebook, it was a long video. It was like 20 minutes. I would post it if I could find it. But it was a black woman saying something like, I don't see George Floyd as part of it, but I do believe he was unjustly killed. And so she goes on to bring to the point, like, the police basically had to do what they had to do because he was hopped up on drugs. She brings up the point that, like, why is it that we're holding this man in such regard when he was a criminal, quote unquote, of this kind of stuff? And, like, while I don't necessarily personally agree with her on some of her points, the biggest one that I think is the martyr aspect of it. Do you believe George Floyd is a murderer? Or is it more that, like, basically, like, yes, we see the injustice, but that's happened in many cases in the past. It's just now brought back up into the forefront.
Yes, I do see him as a martyr, honestly, because the cops went too far with him. Again, like I said before, he may have been high or on drugs and had drugs on him, but tell me in the law, if you're high and have drugs on you, that you get choked out.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's just like it typically, from like hearing my dad talk about things as he was a police officer, he would say like, like some people though, like when they're really hopped up, there's no real way to restrain them. Like sometimes it not in this case, but sometimes it really is quote unquote a fight for your life. And so what I'm saying is like, yes, that brutality was unnecessary because he was already tamed. He was already put to the ground and he was done. I just think like, like the quote that she made was like from an author that I forget the name of now, but basically she said something like, for some reason in other races, like nobody gathers around the lowest common denominator. So what that means is like, basically like, you don't see white people necessarily lessen their racist, right? That they gather around somebody who shot up a school. Like they don't claim them as like, oh, if they were brought down by the police or something like that. And they were like, oh yeah, like, justice for so and so, you know what I mean? But in the case of African Americans, it's like this person could have been doing like illegal activities, drugs, whatever, selling whatever, and find that on the person, but yet for some reason everybody rallies around them regardless of the situation, whether the officer was in the right or the wrong. And I think that's kind of an interesting point. I personally, like, I wouldn't use the term martyr to describe Floyd, but I would say that it's became a symbol on its own. And I'd say that it's just another prevailing example that obsessive force against people of color is still rampant.
Yeah. No. I will say two things to that. One, again, people have actually supported a rapist before. Roman Polanski, when he won the Oscar for the best pianist, you had plenty of white people in our audience clapping. I think who was that? Who was that one lady?
Casey Affleck. This one, Brie Larson didn't clap for Casey Affleck when he got the Oscar.
Who was that one lady? I forget her name, but she's some famous white lady. She was in Mamma Mia.
Meryl Streep,
yes. She was standing and applauding when Roman Polanski won for best picture award for The Pianist. And he was a rapist who fled the country.
Yeah.
He raped a 16-year-old girl and fled the country. So he knew he was guilty. But yet, look, Harvey Weinstein. People knew about Harvey Weinstein, but yet Meryl Streep and others still called him God and say how great he was. So yes, people have rallied around rapists and horrible, shitty fucking people. Yes.
Yeah.
So again, don't do that at all.
Honestly,
one more thing, and he is a martyr because his death has affected change, just like how Emmett Till's death affected change. Yes, Emmett Till might have whistled at a white girl, but tell me, is whistling at a white girl death, being beaten, and being tossed in the fucking lake? No. So don't give me that BS about, he was high. Well, okay, yeah, he might have been high, but tell me, where in the laws tell me choke his ass out if he's high? Yeah. And at most, what you should do is handcuff him, put him in the back of the cruiser, take him off to jail. If you find drugs, he's high, he's selling, whatever the case may be. There's no need to choke his ass out. I'm just saying all that. I'm sorry, you can go on.
No. So that was a good point you brought up, Brad. Just about about rapists, and I mean that's not a good point, but I'm gonna make a point with that. Me and Brad were actually talking about this last week, and it goes to show how if you have status, if you have money, if you can do something for someone, you can get off of many things. I mean, we've seen it with NFL players like Ray Rice,
Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein as well.
Jeffrey Epstein. And the Ray Rice situation. I mean, there's clear video evidence of him beating. And Ray Rice, if you don't know, he's a running back in the NFL. Big dude. He beat up his wife or beat up his girlfriend in the elevator, and he was able to get off charges. And you think like, maybe his race would, help him. I mean, his race would probably be a factor in him getting guilty. But no, I mean, he was a great running back. And I think that really helped. I mean, that was the main thing and why he was able to get off. So that just shows like the corruption in our society. Like and I feel like I'm at fault for this too. Cause like, I mean, I was running last week and on my playlist an R. Kelly song popped up. And I'm like,
exactly.
Oh man, should I change the song? I like this song, And I started to think about it, and I was thinking, back to the George Floyd thing, and then Ray Rice, and I'm like, man, like what R. Kelly has been doing or has allegedly been doing is wrong, but because he's done something great with like his music, it's like I can look past that, but that's not right. So I don't know what if you guys have any other thoughts.
Guys. I mean, another thing is, like, I do agree with the point. I don't know how I feel about whether he's a martyr or not. I'm looking at this as a third person who's looking at this entire situation from a third person. I'm not a citizen. So obviously I don't think it's fair for me to comment about whether he's a martyr or not. But I do agree with the statement that there have been incidents where certain people have gotten a lot more, have gotten lenient sentences in comparison to people of color. One great example, I won't say great, but one big example of how partial the justice system was in the case of Brock Turner. I mean, you knew this guy is a rape. I mean, this guy is a fucking rapist. You know, this guy is a motherfucker. This guy is a motherfucker. He's raped women, but he got 6 months. I mean, in comparison to that, somebody who's in comparison to that, again, this is maybe a hypothetical situation, but had it been a black guy in its place or a person of color, this sentence would have been more grievous. Straight to jail. Not to mention the fact that he would have probably been
and then not the 3 months off for good behavior or some bullshit like that.
None of that. There's no chance of parole. Yeah.
And not hiding his mugshot for a couple weeks, so fam won't feel bad about it.
Exactly. So that's exactly what I'm saying. Again, what I'm trying to say is that clearly the justice system needs major sweeping reforms.
Yeah.
If you want to actually stand by the statement that all lives matter or Black lives matter.
Yeah.
Don't just get on the fucking internet and say, oh, Black lives matter. Okay, what are you doing to do it? I mean, for me, I think another major thing is unfortunately I'm in a situation where I cannot donate money or I cannot spend money to support Black businesses because I'm clearly not in the country. But I can do it I can make this simple statement that while I do not understand the kind of privileges, because I grew up with a very different set of privileges, but I understand that I have privileges. So it is not fair for anyone, or including me, to say that, oh, you should not protest by being violent. How do you know whether? Because let's face it, guys. Let's face it. And this is one question which I did end up asking one of my friends, and she very bluntly told me this, and it's fair for her to say it. She's like, it's not my place to educate you on this. It's your own place to learn about this whole thing. And when I learned about it, I was like, you know what? Maybe the violence is warranted because finally somebody is speaking. Maybe the violence is warranted. It's not my place to say whether it is warranted or not. Maybe the violence is warranted because I guess people have been quiet for too long, and sometimes you just have to shout to make people listen.
Well, I mean, it's like there's a quote from Martin Luther King basically saying, like, riots are basically the voices of the unheard people shouting as far as they can and never really getting a reaction. It's like they've done everything peacefully, and then things come about. And it's like, like the Colin Kaepernick situation, right? That was a very peaceful demonstration of injustice. And what was the response to that? Constant negativity, people burning their Nike shirts because they're upset and Nike stood by him, and it's like, if that instance didn't work and they went the opposite reaction of the way things were intended to be, like, what choice do people really have? And so, I think, talking about rioting in general or just protests in general can kind of lead us to our next kind of discussion on this matter, is that the protests are 100% warranted. And the riots, while I'm not necessarily for the amount of violence that's being caused, it's the same situation we're talking about right now, right? Which is just like, if your best actions still haven't gotten remarkable change at all, what else is it that you have to show that, look, we're not fucking around with this anymore, like something has to change, And so it's like, I feel it's justified in that regard, and then keeping looting on the other side of it, I'm not okay with anybody looting anything at all because it defeats the purpose of the movement you're trying to, bring into play. It's like, you can't just profit off of something just because something else bad happened, that doesn't work both ways.
Yeah. I'm just so fired up right now. But to really go on your whole sort of thing about protesting and rioting, and I loved your point about how are you supposed to feel when you're not really in that community. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, all four of us, me included, we are pretty well off when it comes to people of color. And not just in America, but in a world where they prioritize people of wider looking skin versus us. It's plain and simple. we are pretty well off for that.
I agree.
But we don't know what it's like to go in some of these low-income neighborhoods, live day in and day out, and see people like yourself be unjustly treated and not be able to get the same advantages as people who don't look nothing like you be treated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
day in and day out, you try, you work, like you're working, because for me, we can go on this later, but for some of these people, they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep up with just light bills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're not living. They're living in projects and areas of low income where they're having to like work minimum wage jobs in order to keep the electricity going on, the water going on.
Or just food on the table, dude. Just food on the table.
Exactly. And for some of them, they can't even get food on the table. They need like these free lunch programs that are going on.
And something that's relevant to that, and I'll let you continue in a second, Brad, is like I saw a post on Instagram, and it was just a Twitter quote, right? And it was saying something like, like, why is it that, now rioting and protesting is bad when you realize, like, maybe the reason why there's a larger majority of people now is because, like, look, everybody's home because of Corona, right? So, like, people are going in droves, and it's like, if you're working 40 plus hours a week, like, are you really going to have the energy to protest? Or are you really going to have the energy to interact in that way? And it's like, you realize, like, that's just the way the system was designed to be. It's like, not get you involved in political activities because of this. But now we're seeing this, like, mass drove of people because, honestly, in a weird way, while it wasn't right what happened, it feels like the right moment in time because a lot of people right now are either out of work or they just can't be at work because of the current situation. So this is like such a more massive movement because of it.
That is very true. To continue on, I mean, when you're in those type of dire straits, I mean, I understand when everything first started off, it's a rise of emotion. It's a rise of I'm gonna get the things that never was afforded to me. I'm gonna go see these things that I never even had a chance in my world of getting. And I understand. I understand that. I understand you want to stick it to the man who has denied you, who has put you in your quote unquote place and kept you there, who never allowed you a chance to rise up and to better yourselves like America's supposed to allow you to be. But I don't. But again, listen, like Benny, what you said, protesting rioting is when the last resort, when people can't speak, because so many times where we've had Freddie Gray, so many other black men who've been choked out, who've been shot unjustly by cops, who've been beaten horribly by cops, but you look at the situations where like rioting and protest worked. Look, I'm from Maryland. I'm in Maryland right now. Baltimore happened when I was just graduating high school. There was LA riots. Rodney King got beat, and the reason why rioting and doing this stuff kind of works because some of these white people get scared when it starts to spread into their neighborhoods, when it starts affecting their money, and that's the thing. Like a lot of times, it's easy to ignore somebody who's peacefully protesting in front of your office building. You can just walk around.
Yeah.
But when there's a fucking broken window in your office building, and when shit's on fire, oh shit! Well, I gotta pay attention now. When cars are turned over and things are burning in front of your face, it's not like you can put on some AirPods or some microphone AirPods and walk into your office and not have to worry and not have to hear them yell at your face. But I mean, when things are broken, things are destroyed or on fire, like, it's a lot hard to ignore these issues. Let's try to fix them.
Yeah, Brad, I mean, kind of. Yeah, I'm just going to make it quick.
Go on, Iverson.
But yeah, Brad, just to kind of piggyback off of that, I feel like a big reason why, especially, why the riots have been really spreading like a huge voice is definitely what you're saying is that, now people are being affected by it. White people, Hispanic people, whatever. But through their business getting destroyed. But the reason why I feel like this has been ignored for so many years is because people kind of saw this as like peaceful protesting, black people are getting killed by cops, but it's sad, but it's not really my issue. It's not my problem. But now, like you're saying, Brad, like when I see videos of Urban Outfitters, getting destroyed, and I see someone going in a Honda dealership and stealing a car, now people are like, whoa, now this is affecting me.
Yeah.
This must be a serious issue, and now we have to do
This affects my money.
Yeah, my money. Actually, that's a good point, because I was actually talking to someone, and I mean, this is more on like steps on what we can do or what we can work on, what the system can work on. But I was talking to a friend. He was telling me that a good direction that the system can do with cops is they can find ways to affect their money, find ways to take money out of their pocket if a case of police brutality comes up. And I mean that'll be more technical, but I mean I think it'll be a pretty good idea, because people will see, oh, now they're digging in my pockets. Let's stop this, So I mean, but that's just an idea.
I mean, a simple thing is like, I mean, this is something which happens in India, that if a cop is found dirty, they lose their pension. It's that simple. They lose their pension, and they're dishonorably discharged. They're like suspended. So something, I think like this is something, like you mentioned, Ivy, this is a good point, that defund them. Like defunding something, or like a de-escalation. I think de-escalation tactics should really be taught to these guys who I mean, I think one of our friends was mentioning this, that the cops fancy themselves as Navy SEALs, and I'm like, first of all, I think Navy SEAls are a lot more restrained than these guys are, because this is I'm like this is some some of these cops fancy themselves as Navy SEAls, and I'm like, do you even know what the Navy SEAls go through? Like, to trust me, they're the most restrained people in the world. They're the most lethal people in the world, but they're also restrained as fuck. So and they follow orders, something which cops conveniently seem to forget. When I mean, what the fuck is a knee choke, like putting your knee to a dude's neck and just fucking choking him out? Like, this is some bullshit. But so I mean, that's exactly my point, that it's, I think maybe defunding them, teaching them de-escalation tactics. First of all, stop giving them fucking assault rifles. Stop giving. Why the fuck do cops need assault rifles in an urban setting? Who needs assault rifles?
Yeah, I don't get it. It's situational awareness. You shouldn't be out in the street with an assault rifle, but if you're in a shootout, like that's kind of different.
Like,
but
I understand that.
Like SWAT. They're more like drug cartels. Okay, I understand having a certain armament or certain weapons to have, because I remember this scene from Batman. We put on bulletproof vests. They buy
armor-piercing bullets. Yeah.
We get assault rifles. They get bigger assault rifles. Even though depending on how bad the crime is, you may need a certain level of equipment in order to deal with it. But not every single precinct out there needs to be suited up and booted up to a fight a small country.
The police shouldn't be militarized. That's something there. But I wanted to go back to Brad's previous point about the rioting, and I wanted to give a good example. Like, I'm, half black, half Chilean. And in Chile, there was a big kind of riot happening a while back, and it was more or less about the financial inequality in the country. Basically, they hiked up metro prices to the point where most people would already spend half their paycheck on going to the metro. Because they make very little money. Like, I think average income in Chile for the lower kind of bracket is like $400 a month. So half of that paycheck already goes to the metro, and then they increased the price twice fold for it, and so now people didn't have any money to live. And so I guess a perfect example of a riot that went well for the people's favor is that, what did they do? They destroyed all the metros. They destroyed everything in the city and everything like that. And I mean, there was big cases of police brutality as well. And the thing is, in the end, they got the price to be reduced, and now they're still fighting for even more equal rights. And so I think that's something of that rate, in that sense, it's not a racist issue, but it's a financial gap. And like, people were struggling with that, and it was finally heard. And it was shown that, like, we're not messing around. And so to go to this movement in particular, it's like, well, now what does that do? Rioting, I think, is not that common in America. Sure, there has been in the past, but like, say there was like a large scale riot to the point where like, most of the city couldn't function. Like, that would be a statement in itself of saying, look, like, this has to be addressed. And I think, like, unfortunately, if nothing comes out of this situation that's at hand right now, like, that's probably going to be the next course of action, And so, like, and what is that going to do? It's going to basically halt anybody going to work. It's going to halt businesses. It's going to halt a lot of things to the point where, like, people need to act. And I hope the response isn't more police brutality, but actual real reform. But with that though, like, I mean, like, have you guys like pondered like what kind of reform that we should do? Like, I like the idea that you mentioned about losing the pension in India. I was thinking like maybe like cops would be required to have like a license, like something like that. And so if they're caught up in any case where, like they are, abusing people in an excessive amount, like they immediately lose the license forever and they can't be a cop anymore. Like, I was thinking of something along those lines.
I think suspension is one thing. First of all, you just immediately suspend this person. That this person should not be essentially.
Suspension is normally what's always done, and then like in a few months later, when the situation's cooled off, they just come back. And like that's exactly the case of like this guy who killed Floyd. Basically, like, you look at his track history and you see that he's had many instances where he's beating up on black people, and like he had to hop around police stations basically. So like, I think something of like actually licensing them and saying, hey, look, if you're caught in any of this activity one time, you're out. Like, and I think that might be a way of fixing it.
That's what I was actually coming to. Like, first is suspension, but then like for me it should be essentially the first step should be suspension, but the second step should immediately be that if this thing is actually proved, that is where, which in this case obviously should be the answer, because you can't just because somebody's accusing you of something, it should not be the case. So it can, I'm just saying this is a possibility. I'm not talking about this in this case, I'm just talking about it in general, like an overview. After the investigation has been proved that okay, this person has been involved in this kind of shit, get rid of this person. This person doesn't, and then again, if these charges are proved that he's in like for instance, this officer who was in former officer who was who pretty much put his knee on this dude's neck. He should essentially be now obviously charged with murder. So, and of course it's losing the pension, losing all the privileges that this person enjoyed as a public servant. They eventually lose these privileges, and I think that's sufficient punishment, number one. Another thing you could do is pretty much, I think police funding should be cut from like departments who have low performing departments, or like departments who like have like high rates of murders, like this kind of stuff. I think because there have, like, I was reading some of these posts, and there was this one post which I was reading up about it, and they said a lot of people have cut, like a lot of states, certain like cities have cut, like they cut the funding of certain departments or certain precincts because they were just low performing in terms of in terms of community outreach, or becoming one with the community and like understanding that. And once they cut their funding down, immediately their performance improved again. So I think if you don't have money, how are you going to purchase better guns, better armaments, better this thing? Then you're going to start thinking about de-escalating, because you're like, okay, you don't have money, so you can't afford to get into a gunfight with these people.
Yeah. I think it's a good point. Like
that
the
makes more
defund thing,
sense.
I think it'd be interesting. Like I think a pretty good statement in this regard is like I kind of agree with them burning down the police station, for example.
Yeah.
But imagine like with this response, like never build the building back again. You're just immediately defunded. Like like I think that would make a radical statement right there that this is no longer something that's tolerated.
Oh yeah, exactly. To get back to what you were saying, Morgan Benny, I think the main thing we should do is again case by case basis. I'm gonna go on a more of a 3-strike rule with this, but if there are 3 strikes against you and legitimate strikes against you about your character and how you act in the community, you're out. I mean, no question, ifs, ors, or buts. You're going to be out if things come up where you got to take you to court because of how aggressive you've acted and that what you've done is seen as aggressive. Then we're going to take you to court and we're going to make sure that we don't have you anymore and we're going to set an example. Another thing is, I think there needs to be better training. I think I don't believe that allowing 18-year-olds to join the police force automatically after high school is a good thing to do because a lot of these 18-year-olds haven't lived their life pretty much, and they've only known their own community. So if you have this country person who lives a certain life and hasn't really had much exposure to the black community, he may see that as that's an unruly bunch, and I need to keep my foot on their necks and my knees on their necks to keep them in control. So I think there needs to be like just how there's an age limit on drinking, there's need to be age limit for when you can join the police force. Like let's say at 21, you can join the police force.
25.
Another thing.
Some age in mid.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, yes, some age like that where you've lived a life where there needs to be a thorough background check to see if we're gonna put you in a police station where there are more African Americans, more minorities. Does your personality match well with that? If it doesn't, then we don't need you in here. We need you.
Now that you mentioned it, psych profiles is something which I was thinking about. Like, I mean, like, so here's something like before this is something which I have read about and I've even seen in tons of movies, tons of documentaries where the Secret Service pretty much does not just thorough background checks. They also check up what your psyche is and psych profiles. They run constant psych profiles on you to make sure that you are capable and I think capability is pretty much the main thing because you're protecting one of like you're protecting the president, you're protecting POTUS. So, or even as an FBI agent, you'll be running cases and you're running cases to kill, to hunt down and think like a serial killer that can severely affect your psyche in one way or the other. So they run constant psychological profiles on you. I think something like that can pretty much. So I think a conjunction, in working in conjunction with the police department, if they have a separate psychology department, which is run with psychologists or psychiatrists, that I'm pretty sure that I think understanding the mental health and the stress and all the tension which the cops go through, and understanding that from the very beginning. If the psychiatrists say that, okay, this person is not mentally fit to be a police officer or to uphold the law because he's going to be racist or he's going to be this thing, because you can't hide racism. How can you hide racism? It's pretty evident sometimes.
Yeah,
it's pretty evident. So that is something which I think instead of just giving a gun to an 18-year-old saying, hey, protect the streets, that I don't think is going to be the smartest option. Instead, another thing which I've noticed in many in Israel, I've noticed this, that people who graduate high school, they're given 6 to 10 years of compulsory military treatment, military. They have to serve in the military. Perhaps something like that, because at the end of the day, the US military is one of the world's largest militaries, and perhaps some sort of training that way, that even cops are given military training and they have to constantly train with
I mean,
this thing.
that's my dad's personal background is military and then police, you know.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, and like, but also like I think like, you know, like cops really aren't taught martial arts, you know, like they are, but they're not, you know, like it's like they learn simple things, but I mean, like I think like the problem is like you right, this wasn't a shooting situation, but you know, like I think the problem is like you have a lot of that kind of training, like a young kid, it's like okay, well I'm gonna rely on my gun, like no, like rely on like learning how to actually make people submit correctly, you know, like learn how to make that a process and like know what you're doing instead of just using excessive force. I think that's something that should be heavily taught.
Yeah, no, because
which is what the military, which is essentially what the military does. So that's something which I was thinking about. Sorry, Brad. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I'll just say this quick thing. Because, you know, as far as I know, nobody's as united as the military. They think as one unit, they act as one unit. I mean, you look at any platoon, you look at any squadron, they literally think as one unit. Like even if it's a small squad of 5 soldiers, everybody pays attention to the sergeant, who then reports to the major, to the, you know, as it goes up the hierarchy. So essentially, if you know, if these guys are taught that okay, you have to act as one unit, you have to act as one this thing. So if somebody's coming at you with a gun, then okay, it's high time that you draw your gun and maybe, you know, you this thing.
Yeah.
But if this person's literally, you know, he's just coked up and he's just drunk or something, why the fuck do you need to take your gun out?
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's exact. And like, or worst case scenario, why the fuck do you have to barge into somebody's house and shoot them in the head?
Exactly.
Just because you suspect, just because you fucking suspected them that they're up to something. They're fucking chilling in their house, dude. Why the fuck would you jump into their? You jumped into the house without a warrant and you shot this person in the head. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Honestly,
And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just that. I forgot. You can go on real quick. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh no! So I was just gonna try to change the topic a little bit, dealing with this. So, with this whole situation and situations we've seen in the past, what we can all assume is that it all starts with a stereotype, right?
Yeah.
With a stereotype against, you know, Black people, people of color. And I was talking to a friend last week. We got on a group call, and he was asking me, like, you know, when in our lives do these stereotypes start to come, you know? And he told me a story. He's white, and he was telling me a story of how when he was in kindergarten, one of his best friends was Black, but he didn't realize he was different from him until when he got older, when he was in 3rd or 4th grade, and schools, you know, they start teaching about, you know, slavery or, you know, things, you know, during February, they'll be like, oh, this is Black History Month. You know, we're going to talk about Martin Luther King this month. And honestly, and he was asking me, he's like, oh, how did it feel, like, being in those classrooms? And, you know, thinking back to it, I was like, it was awkward. I mean, because, I mean, I was one of the few Black kids in some classes, especially when I got older, you know, like, I tried to, you know, be in honors classes and stuff. And, you know, I was, you know, the only Black kid in those classes. But, you know, especially when I was younger, you know, a little 3rd or 4th grader, and then you hear the teacher start talking about, oh, slavery and this is Black History Month, and Rosa Parks sat in the back of the bus, and you're in a class with a bunch of, you know, white kids or Hispanic kids or whatever, you know, they're looking at you. And I feel like that's when they start seeing you as different. But it also goes to show is it's not a bad thing to talk about those things. Like, it's history, you know, and that's, you know, that's stuff that happened, and it's important to know that. But it also shows us how different we are, you know, based on skin color. So, I don't know.
I remember what I was
going to say. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I remember what I was going to say. For what I'm gonna go back to you, obviously, in a minute, but Moog, cops, especially in America, they aren't taught to de-escalate problems. They're taught to escalate it with as much force as possible to end it. Versus, hey, let me sit down, let me talk to this person, let me see what's going on. You know, pulling the gun out should only be if cases get really serious. You know that is the only case you should ever pull your gun out. I feel like for cops, but cops are not trained, or either they are trained, they aren't trained, or they are trained just to, if you see someone going down, pull your gun out immediately. Pull a weapon out. Just go ahead.
But what do you consider serious? Like when the cop has a gun pulled on them?
Like
someone has a
when your life
knife,
is actually threatened.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's say you're pulling somebody over who is doing the speed limit, and they tell you, "Hey, I have a gun. I'm registered with my gun's licensed registered, but I'm reaching for my wallet." And you shoot that person, and he told you straight up he has a gun. He's going for his wallet.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Because funnily enough, in India, these things don't happen. Of course, there are dirty cops. I'm not saying that there are dirty cops, but it's like most of the cops, even like the guys who patrol the streets, only the guy who's pretty much I keep forgetting the rankings, but patrol officers are given batons. They're not given guns and shit. This is something which I've only noticed in the US. These guys are like fucking armed to the teeth. They're given batons. They're given tasers, pepper spray,
tasers.
Why the fuck does this guy need so many things? Okay, why does this guy need a gun then?
Yeah,
and they're still fat. After that, also they're still fat.
Exactly. I remember Chris Rock said this one kind of funny joke